Okay, I haven't done one of these in a fat bit. Let's get this started, baby. Crossover battle. All right. So for the people wondering how I came up with this idea for the Stardust Crusaders to fight the Sound 4 or just overall do the Sasuke Retrieval Arc came to me in a vision, aka the shower the other day. And I thought, that's pretty good. Why don't I actually do a video on that? As I've always found the idea of teams in anime trying to do this very important arc in early Naruto to be very fascinating, at least in the power scaling sense. On top of that, the idea of jutsu and stands in a versus battle is just very interesting in and of itself, at least to me. So having the Stardust Crusaders just try to do the Sasuke Retrieval Arc is just really cool. That's why I want to mainly do it. Plus, I've been in a Naruto One Piece mood as of late, so you might get a One Piece video. I don't know.
One Piece is real!
So the first thing I need to get out the way is the conditions of the fight. How are the matchups going to play out? What's it looking like? It's just going to be one giant group battle, or is it going to be very similar to the story? In this scenario, just to keep it all simple, I'm just going to make it very similar to the part 1 Naruto story of the Sasuke Retrieval Arc to mostly a T. What I mean by mostly is literally replacing Shikamaru's group with Stardust Crusaders. That's about it. I know people are going to ask, why are the Stardust Crusaders here? I don't know. Plot. I don't really know. This is just for funnies. We're just using the video for hypothetical purposes for this fight to occur. That's about it. That's mainly what's going to happen. I'm going to try to make the matchups, I think, the most interesting as possible for a lot of the cases here. For some of them, it's just mainly out of, I just didn't have any people left, so they just have to fight each other. So with all that basic information out the way, let's actually get into the fight. So how the Stardust Crusaders go from Konoha to eventually fighting the Sound 4 to begin with is probably due to a combination of Star Platinum's incredible vision and perception, Kakyoin's overall intelligence using context clues, and the ability of Hermit Purple, thanks to Joseph, making a map of probably where there are. From here, it plays out very similar to the original story, where Jirobo probably is the first one to actually attack and use the chakra sucking barrier to enclose the Stardust Crusaders. From here, the Sound 4, or I guess the Sound 3, bounce from this location. Now the Stardust Crusaders have to find a way out, and this is where we're gonna enter the whole how do jutsus work against stand users argument that's probably going to pop up a lot during this video. So in specific with this scenario, the barrier absorbs chakra, but here's the thing, and I'm going to clarify this a lot of times within the video, the Stardust Crusaders don't have chakra. They are not like the humans in the Naruto universe. They are not biologically born with a chakra network in their system, meaning that most techniques, and in specific in this scenario right here with Jirobo's barrier, it wouldn't hold them back and the group can destroy the barrier almost instantly. A similar scenario happened in part 3 where Jotaro and Star Platinum with the power to bust diamonds broke down a barrier very similar to this, but it just didn't absorb chakra, so they literally would be fine here. Unless Jirobo's barrier was harder than diamonds, but I doubt that as there's no evidence saying that it is. Now I'd like to clarify here, the scaling for the Sound 4 is probably a bit murky, as in the actual arc they did fight a bunch of Jonin before fighting the actual main group. That leads them to be a bit weaker, so the scaling here could be actually a bit off, but since we never see their full power, I really can't determine how strong they actually are. Which brings me into who is going to fight Jirobo one-on-one for the rest of the team to leave. And I personally think for a more interesting fight mirroring the Choji versus Jirobo fight would be Joseph versus Jirobo. The reason why I chose this was just because of the fact of the similarities between, like, oh, Joseph's weaker in part 3 and Choji's supposed to be the weakest of the group supposedly, so I thought that was a pretty cool similarity, so that's why I chose this matchup. So coming into this match, both Jirobo and Joseph have very similar stats, at least in their base forms. So quickly going over Jirobo first, he is very powerful, but he's not one of the strongest of the Sound 4. When it comes to his overall AP, or his attack potency, it varies. In his base form, we knew that he can kick Sasuke's ass pretty well, as the rest of the Sound 4 did, placing him somewhere in city block level at bare minimum, as this is a Sasuke post Land of Waves arc and the tuning exams. Now when it comes to his higher levels in his curse mark states, of course being at maximum level 2, his maximum AP output should be around town level at the highest, as he's throwing around a Choji who is massive. So when it comes to his speed, this is where all the Sound 4 and technically the Sound 5 get a little bit weird, as there is no speed scaling within this fight, or at least the whole arc in general. At the best you could go speed blitzing an early Sasuke within this arc, hypersonic. The highest you could possibly go would be high hypersonic with Jirobo. That's that's about it. You can't really go any higher. Now, there are other characters within this arc that are possibly faster, but Jirobo is not one of them. So when it comes to Jirobo's durability, I think it's probably about the same as his attack potency. There's not really a lot of evidence saying it's any higher or any lower, so I think that's about pretty fair for him, honestly speaking. Now moving on to Joseph Joestar. In terms of AP in part 3, he's somewhere probably in building level plus at max, as he was able to kill the Empress, a stand that was connected to his body, and we know in previous parts, like part 2, his durability was way higher as he was fighting characters like Wamu and AC/DC who were significantly times stronger than him and was still able to beat them in that part and were able to outlast them, thanks to his Hamon abilities. While not in his physical prime anymore, the Empress of course takes his physical attributes while being connected to him and defeated Empress by just literally squeezing her to death with Hermit Purple. Now moving on to his speed, this is where it gets a massive difference between these two, is that Joseph Joestar is probably still, even in his old age, faster than Light or massively faster than Light, as Joseph is able to react to Polnareff, a character with a stand that is at a light speed level, bare minimum, who has fought stands who are massively faster than Light on multiple occasions, and in some cases has enough speed to out showcase Star Platinum, like in the fight against High Empress. So saying Joseph's speed somewhere in FTL to massively FTL is pretty fair. And when it comes down to durability, very similar to Jirobo, it's probably the same as his AP, so somewhere in building level plus. So unlike Jirobo, who is a character who just uses physical strength and jutsus that show off his physical strength, Joseph has a larger repertoire of abilities to go back on. Of course, the biggest one being here Hamon, as it has a very large repertoire of things you can do with it. There is an entire wiki page on it, as most of all Hamon users basically have the same techniques, just with a different variation to them. The biggest ones here are going to be the ones that manipulate another person's body, as Hamon can do that. And now thanks to Hermit Purple, a ability that Jirobo cannot see because stand users can only see other stand users' stands, would be totally blind to, as that now gives Joseph a longer range to use his Hamon abilities. On top of the fact that Hamon can enhance Joseph's body to an incredibly high level at times if he needs it, but of course he's not in his prime anymore, so that can be, I guess, debated on. So who do I think is going to win this fight? Well, I think this is going to be a bit controversial to say, but I think it might end up in a draw. While Jirobo definitely has the durability and the AP advantage, Joseph has the experience, the hack advantage, and the speed advantage here, and the fact that Jirobo can't see stands. I just don't think Joseph is going to do enough damage to Jirobo to actually significantly damage him enough to knock him out and or kill him. And on the other side of that, Jirobo's not fast enough to hit Joseph, as, newsflash, massively faster than Light versus hypersonic is a massive difference in speed, FYI. I just think it's going to be some variation of a draw, either Joseph dies or Jirobo dies, leading to either one of them being knocked out so they don't participate in the rest of the fight. There's just a lot of variations on how these characters can get knocked out, but I just don't think they're going to play a significant part after this fight in some way. Very similar to how it went down in the original story. If anything, if somebody wanted a more like concrete answer, it'd probably end up with Jirobo dying with an unconscious Joseph, as Joseph was fighting pillarmen who are significantly smarter than basically the entire human population in JoJo's, having IQs of near damn 300. So basically they're on some Itachi level shit. So moving on to our next fight being Kidomaru versus Kakyoin, the long range users of both groups respectively. And starting off with the easiest one here to scale would be Kakyoin. With Kakyoin, you're basically just scaling off of other characters. Kakyoin's probably biggest claim to fame in terms of AP was harming Polnareff during his fight against J-Guile and Whole Horse. Polnareff being the guy who was able to fight Avdol and Star Platinum during the events of Stardust Crusaders, meaning that his durability is incredibly high. Somewhere, and not to get into spoilers further further into the video of how some of these characters scaling goes would be somewhere in between like town level to the highest you could possibly go would be large mountain level. And since Kakyoin was able to harm somebody like Polnareff, who has fought these characters who are very, very powerful, I think the greatest AP you could give Kakyoin would be either like town level at bare minimum to at least at the highest scaling like large town level plus. Now when it comes to Kakyoin's speed, very similar to Joseph, he did react to High Empress, meaning at the highest his speed scaling would go would be somewhere in massively faster than light, and at the lowest during his J Guile fight he was reacting to light, so he would be light speed at the lowest end. So in terms of durability, this is where we enter the fun zone. It's a bit interpretative, as when Kakyoin gets hit, he gets hit really hard, so he's kind of the glass cannon of the group. The greatest thing he was able to withstand / endure was Dio's fatal shot to the gut that he took, and he was able to survive for a little bit after that. So I think the most I could give him is maybe like what, large building durability at best, which is pretty consistent as that's what Jotaro did to him at the beginning of part 3. But we know Kakyoin gets stronger since then, so it's a bit weird. And of course, Kakyoin's greatest move here with Hierophant Green in his stand would be his 20-meter Emerald Splash, which is basically a giant radius of 20 meters, which if you were to accidentally touch one of his tentacles, you're gonna get hit with an Emerald Splash. And I mean like a lot of Emerald Splashes in this 20 meters, as it's basically almost impossible to get out of it. Now moving on to Kidomaru, in terms of his stats, they're basically scaling off Jirobo's here, as it's stated plenty of times that he's just stronger than him, meaning that his AP and durability would be basically about the same, just slightly being above that. That would also go for speed as well, but like I said before, the Sound Force speed feats are a bit weird, so it still would be basically be in high hypersonic for now. Overall, when it comes to his kit, it's a lot more diverse than Jirobo's. Spider summoning would be one of his bigger ones, as he is able to summon a giant spider that can have more spiders to help him in battle. His sticky gold technique, which basically just makes him more durable as his sweat becomes metallic in nature, and his ability to spit webs. I technically don't know if this is a chakra based ability or just something part of his biology. On top of that, his curse mark at level 2 makes him a lot stronger, 10 times powerful, just like Jirobo, but which overall just shows him being a lot more accurate with his abilities, as he's able to make massive arrows that do quite a lot of damage, but he cannot be in this form for very long as it takes a toll on his body. Overall, who do I think wins this fight? In terms of stats alone, Kakyoin technically has this in the bag. On top of the fact that the 20-meter Emerald Splash is basically hidden from Kidomaru, as of course he's not a stand user, so he can't see Hierophant Green. So basically Kidomaru would be in one giant trap which he couldn't figure out where he's being hit from at any time. And since Kakyoin is the character to lay out traps and is the tactical genius of the Stardust Crusaders, being something similar to Shikamaru, he definitely lay out some stuff to where Kidomaru would be just basically getting hit the entire time. I feel like this is slightly one-sided due to the fact that he can't see Hierophant Green or the 20-meter Emerald Splash. So this is the part of the video where we get into the interesting Naruto scaling involving Kidomaru that might flip this fight upside down. It is stated by Kidomaru that he has fought Kimimaro at some point back during when the Sound 4 was the Sound 5. And to cut it briefly here, Kimimaro apparently, with some scaling I'll get into later in the video, has mountain level AP and mountain level durability. If Kidomaru has anything even close to any of that scaling, he definitely beats Kakyoin in a fight, as basically those stats mirror Star Platinum the World and Jotaro Kujo. So overall, I would say Kakyoin wins, but I'd put an asterisk next to it saying that Kidomaru could possibly win depending on how that fight originally went. We just don't know a lot about it. Even then, with Kakyoin winning, I think he'd probably be damaged enough to where he probably couldn't participate in any other fights regardless if he won or not, but we'll just leave it at that. So coming up next is a fight that, well, these two people, I didn't really know where else to put them, so I kind of defaulted on them fighting each other. Polnareff versus Tayuya. I swear, some of these Naruto names get me messed up, dude. Tayuya is kind of an interesting case in terms of her scaling a little bit, as when it comes to her AP, she definitely scales above Jirobo, as she quite literally states that he is the weakest one, but you also can interpret from that line that she is also stronger than Kidomaru. And if that's true, and if you go with the higher scaling for him, she potentially could be extremely strong, but even then she gets really scared of the fact that Kimimaro is around and tells her not to do anything anymore, and she's like, oh shit, never mind. So it's like really up to question with a lot of her like AP scaling. I think a fair assessment would say that both Kidomaru and Tayuya are basically about the same, at least maybe in the same level of power, as she was able to slug Naruto pretty damn hard. And in her KCS2 state, as she gets 10 times stronger, at the max you could put her at would be at town level. And that would go for the same as her durability as the rest of the Sound 4. And when it comes to her speed, it'd still be high hypersonic. Yet again, nobody in this arc has like crazy speed scaling here. Now, when it comes to her other abilities, she can use her summons, which have the ability to summon, I don't know what to really call them, like parasite tongues that feed off of physical energy that basically adequate to just stealing chakra, as physical energy in Naruto is just another word for chakra. On top of that, the flute she uses to control her summons also doubles as a genjutsu tool against her opponents. Overall, looking at her, she is pretty formidable. Now, looking at Polnareff real quick.
I've got 80 million powered Rise of Kingdoms, top 10 in the server.
Yeah, I don't think this fight's gonna be fair. So, in terms of speed here, this is probably the thing he's most notable for. In multiple occasions has either tagged light, blocked light, or slashed light. He is definitely faster than light speeds at bare minimum. He has fought stands like Star Platinum and stands that have kind of challenged Star Platinum with some efficiency behind it. So I can confidently say for a fact he definitely belongs in, at the highest levels, massively faster than light. And that's not with his armor off, as his stand, Silver Chariot, if his armor is taken off, gets even faster at the cost of him becoming weaker in terms of durability. But then when it comes to his AP, and I will bring up this now, but this will be used for Star Platinum later, is the Sun feat. I've brought it up a lot of times here on the channel, but basically the stand, the Sun, is basically very similar to the Sun in a lot of its scaling. It fired off laser beams at Silver Chariot, which Silver Chariot reacted to, and counterattacked. And doing some quick maths, at a low ball has city level AP, at a mid ball has city level AP, and at a high ball, large mountain level AP. And when it comes to his durability, this is the same stand that has fought Star Platinum, who scales above him. So in terms of durability, it's basically the same as his AP, but you could argue, since this guy takes a lot of damage throughout the entire series, in this part and in others, as he's literally survived being chopped in half at Diavolo, his durability probably is significantly higher than his AP, which leads me into how this fight would play out. Tetsuya's abilities probably wouldn't work on the Crusaders for a number of reasons. Welcome to the category I've been slowly hinting at through the entire video. The opponent needs to have chakra so I can beat their ass category. Like the category says, a lot of the time in Naruto, the only way to beat your opponent is to manipulate their chakra network. But what happens when your opponent doesn't have a chakra network? Well, to put it in a layman's terms, nothing would happen. Her summon's ability to steal physical energy, which is chakra, well, wouldn't do anything. It just passed through Polnareff like it passed through those trees in these manga panels. Nothing would happen to him or any other Stardust Crusaders, as guess what? They don't have chakra networks. Chakra networks are only in Naruto, as they're more of a biological thing that you get at birth. So what about Genjutsu? Would those work? No. As stated by Jiraiya of the legendary Sannin, Genjutsu affects all 5 senses that connect to the brain using the brain's chakra. Guess what? The Stardust Crusaders, again, don't have a chakra network. Genjutsus don't work on people that don't have chakra networks.
Editor's note from the future: this is a heavily debated subject and its effects are still up in the air. We don't know whether or not the flute or genjutsus would work. However, in this situation, even if it worked, the stand users could just break out by allowing their stands to inflict pain on the user. Since Shikamaru escaped by doing the same thing with his shadows. We saw many times in the past, where stands, which didn't really express that much individuality, act as if it was a separate individual with a mind of their own, like Star Platinum. Even if the user can't consciously command them, this aspect will allow them to take the initiative, and break the user out from the genjutsu.
This fight would basically just be Polnareff being confused half the time fighting all of her abilities, as her entire arsenal literally is not effective against Polnareff. They actually would do no effect. And since Polnareff has such a massive advantage in stats, he would just simply speed blitz her and one-shot, in all honesty. It's really one-sided here. I'm kind of sorry for her. So moving on to our next fight, it would be Muhammad Avdol versus Sakon and Ukon. Starting with the brothers first, they are stated to be the strongest out of the Sound 4 without any weird scaling from the previous parts if you really want to get into that theoretical scaling. They are confirmed by Kabuto to be the strongest out of the 4. Leading into the idea when it comes to their attack potency would be at Jirobo's highest, meaning Small Town Plus, in their Curse Mark level 2 forms, thanks to Kabuto's statements. And when it comes to durability, same as before, it's exactly like their AP. Now, of course, does their speed change being the strongest? Probably not. It's still hypersonic, but I'd argue since they are quote unquote the strongest, I would feel like they would be at least high hypersonic plus in all fairness. Now, the reason why they're probably deemed the strongest out of the Sound 4 is because, well, there's 2 of them that inhabit one body and both of them have the same stats, and they are, at least from what we know, the physically strongest out of all of them. And not to mention, on top of all of that, they might actually have the best ability. Their Parasite Demon Demolition technique has the ability to, at least in their Curse Mark level 2 states, inhabit other people's bodies. And due to the nature of the Curse Marks, it slowly can kill a person. They are a very lethal pairing, and now I can understand why they are deemed the strongest. So what does Avdol have? This is where we get into the weird JoJo scaling. While Avdol has defeated Polnareff twice in the same fight and has subdued Star Platinum, he does have a lot of outlier feats that just kind of make him kind of mid. Like, he gets grazed by a bullet from the Stand the Emperor and he's like KO'd, and then just comes back and it's just like, what? On top of that, Araki thought his fire manipulation ability was too overpowered, so that's why he shelved him for a little bit to come back then to only get killed again for reals this time. So it's like double what? Out of all the Stardust Crusaders, he is definitely the most underutilized by a lot. And to describe him as a super glass cannon isn't entirely wrong. If it wasn't for getting folded by Whole Horse's Emperor with one shot to grazing his dome, I would say he clears this fight, just going off the fact that he beat Silver Chariot in early part 3. But since he did get grazed and one-shotted, I don't know what to really say about him. So I think this matchup could be like 50-50. 2 against 1 is a pretty significant factor, and the brothers are not weak and do got some very powerful hacks behind their abilities. But Avdol is pretty smart, so it's very, very contentious. I don't really know what to say. I guess maybe just due to the stat advantage, I'd say Avdol, but to be honest, I might be on the fence on this one, because the brothers do have at least the first gate Rashomon, so it's like, damn, kind of got that dog in them. All right, the final 2 fights within this arc. Jotaro versus Kimimaro. Starting off with Jotaro first, as I know him extremely well, Jotaro Kujo is one of the strongest characters in JoJo by far. Thanks to all the Stardust Crusaders at one point or another saying that Jotaro is just blatantly stronger than them, you can basically use all their feats they've ever done in Stardust Crusaders and just base it off of that, which brings me back to the Sun feat by Silver Chariot. Polnareff has stated on multiple occasions that Jotaro and Star Platinum are way stronger than him, putting his AP anywhere in that small city to large mountain level plus ranges. And it is probably the higher ones that make more sense, as everybody just blatantly says that Jotaro is just a freak of nature with an abnormal level of strength, as he fights a character with the literal same stats, being Dio and the World, who was able to tank and throw out the same level of blows to Dio. And when it comes to speed, there is a metric ass ton of statements and feats just blatantly saying he's faster than light, coming from part 6 and part 3, and outscales characters who have been calced at massively faster than light speed, so he would be confidently placed at massively faster than light plus speeds. And when it comes to his durability, it is probably significantly higher than his AP, as, like I said previously, he fought Dio, who basically has the same stats as himself, and was able to survive those same AP blows. And it only gets better. Jotaro's thing for quite a while was his insane precision thanks to Star Platinum, being able to see miles away, similar to the Byakugan from part 2 of Naruto. On top of that, having the ability to stop time for 5 whole seconds. Jotaro's really nasty. He's a monster. But Kimimaro still has that dog in him too. He effortlessly beats down hundreds of Naruto shadow clones who are in a feral state thanks to the Nine Tails. And eventually, when he fights Gaara, who throws an entire sand mountain at him, he tanks it and proceeds to try to to attack Gaara right after that, reasonably putting him at a low ball mountain level, and at his highest, thanks to his Curse Mark II level state, large mountain level. In terms of speed, because he scales off of all the previous Sound 4 members, he's definitely Hypersonic Plus, but since he's fighting Naruto clones who are infected by the Nine Tails, massively Hypersonic Plus does work here as well. But in the Land of Waves arc, Naruto in a feral state did do a light speed feat. And since Naruto has gotten a lot stronger since then, it could be reasonable to say here that Kimimaro probably is light speed here, as Kimimaro effortlessly beats a whole bunch of feral Naruto clones. And on top of that, his durability is probably the same as his AP as per usual. But when it comes to his abilities, he does have a pretty cool set. I won't lie, the ability to manipulate your bones is pretty useful, as he's able to fire them out or use them as swords or spears, stating said bones are as hard as steel. So who wins? Well, I can't answer that question, as I'm not actually going to let them fight the whole time. Since I'm trying to make this very similar to the original Naruto story, Sasuke eventually gets out of the seal and of course runs away. Jotaro of course follows after him, leading to the question, how much damage has Jotaro dealt to Kimimaro? In all honesty, due to the massive speed advantage here and time stop being a way better hack than anything Kimimaro has, I definitely would have to say Kimimaro was probably going to lose that fight, definitely. On top of the fact that Kimimaro can't see Star Platinum, so he basically would be fighting a ghost that was way stronger than him to begin with, so that probably was difficult to fight this whole time. Probably would be in a worse condition than the original story. But who comes to Jotaro's aid? Well, that would be Polnareff and Iggy, filling in the roles of Gaara and Rock Lee. And to quickly go over Iggy's stats, basically during its introduction and his fight with Pet Shop, you can determine that the statement of him being stronger than Polnareff is pretty accurate. Now, Iggy being stronger than Jotaro, that one's a bit fishy under the context of that whole few pages. It is supposed to be taken as a joke, but it would basically just be two Polnareffs versus Kimimaro, with one of them having the ability to sand manipulate, which they primarily use just to make illusions or defensive objects. Since Kimimaro is already heavily weakened and probably is going to use his Curse Mark level 2 state, it basically just becomes a game of how fast is Kimimaro going to die. Probably the same amount of time it took like in the original story, with Polnareff and Iggy probably taking heavy amounts of damage, just like in the original story with Lee and Gaara, as Kimimaro is very similar in scaling qualities to Iggy and Polnareff. Funny enough, this fight also mirrors the Vanilla Ice fight. That's just kind of weird. What if Iggy dies again? That would be so comically funny. It probably doesn't happen, but it would be funny. All right, last round. Jotaro Kujo versus Sasuke Uchiha from the end of part 1. Since I've already talked about Jotaro, we'll just jump into Sasuke. Surprisingly, him and Kimimaro are very similar, which kind of shocks me that nobody's done a matchup between those two. Somebody get on that. Before getting his 3-Tomo Sharingan and his second Curse Mark level, Sasuke's somewhere around that multi-city block, massively hypersonic plus speeds, but after gaining his 3-Tomo Sharingan and his second release, and fighting a Naruto with his Nine Tails cloak, I would definitely say he's in that same level as Kimimaro now, being light speed and having AP somewhere in that large mountain level scale, on the higher end of that, as his final clash with Naruto kind of proves that he's in that level now. Like I've said previous, the main reason why he's at this level now is because of his second level Curse Mark, which arguably is a lot stronger than even Kimimaru's Curse Mark, which Kabuto was kind of wondering about. The fact that Sasuke went from not even being close to the Sound Force level to in one go being even damn near Kimimaru's level is kind of insane. And we still have to talk about Sasuke's newly acquired 3-Tomo Sharingan, which possesses a lot of new abilities. Some of the biggest ones being able to copy taijutsu and just regular jutsu in general, if the user is physically capable of doing it. On top of all of that, their eyesight is like wicked strong now, being able to see chakra networks and objects on a cellular level. On top of all of that, their eyes are so good at tracking things. Their analytical prediction is so good they can see their opponent's movements before they even do them, and also have the ability to get out of genjutsus if they're under one thanks to their Sharingans. And it doesn't end there, as the next one, or next two technically, make this fight a lot interesting if it's true. The Sharingan possibly could see Star Platinum, maybe, as there are a few examples of the Sharingan being able to see invisible individuals and entities. So it begs the question, could Sasuke see Star Platinum and copy his movements with his taijutsu copying abilities? I don't really know, because how characters with the Sharingan see invisible entities or individuals individuals is weird. They can just see them, but it's never explained why they can see them. It's probably due to a combination of both their analytical abilities and their chakra seeing abilities playing a factor with each other, being able to see these individuals and entities. What I want to say here about this clash of powers is probably that the Sharingan couldn't see Star Platinum due to the fact that it's not chakra based. Star Platinum is more like a psychological, biological thing attached to Jotaro now, and has no connection to the Naruto world's chakra network system and how that whole thing works out in that universe's lore and biology. And even if it did see it, there is one caveat with the Sharingan. If the person they are fighting is way faster than them, the Sharingan abilities kind of wane and they won't be able to perceive them as they're way too fast for them. So all their copying and prediction of movement kind of falls behind. Basically, if you want to see it like this, it's still a negative situation for Sasuke, as Jotaro and Star Platinum are still way faster than him, as they are massively faster in Light Plus and he's still at light speed at maximum, or he can't see them at all and that's still a bigger problem for them. So it's still not good for him either way. So how is this fight going to play out? Who's going to be dealing damage? What's happening here? What's the overall battle going to look like? In terms of stats, the only thing Sasuke is really lacking here is in speed, but in terms of AP and durability, Jotaro is barely edging him out. So it's still kind of even. And while Sasuke does have ranged abilities, very similar to how it went down in the original fight, Star Platinum could similarly either swallow or yell away his fire techniques. As in the past, Jotaro and Star Platinum have sucked in whole towns worth of air, or used Time Stop as a mediary counter to get away from these long range attacks. Even when these guys are at their full power, with no rage boost, we'll talk about that soon, it looks like Jotaro slightly edges out Sasuke due to the fact that he has slightly better stats, and Time Stop is probably going to play a pretty crucial role here, as stopping time is probably better than the Sharingan, at least at this age. Eventually when Sasuke gets older in part 2, that's a completely different story for another day, but at least right now, Time Stop is looking like the better hack ability. Like, come on, you have to agree. If your opponent's standing still for 5 seconds or able to land any blow you want, is pretty nuts. And to kind of close the case, if he can win this fight against Sasuke, we'll talk about the rage boost. Previously to this, I think he would have won, probably barely edging him out. But now, thanks to reaching a breaking point with his emotions, Jotaro can enter a state where he just gets way angry and way stronger. In the fight against Dio awakens to his full powers after drinking Joseph's blood. Previous in part 1, Phantom Blood, Zappelli states that Dio is 5 times stronger than him and Jonathan. And in part 3, he states after getting Joseph's blood that he's never felt this kind of high before in power, meaning Dio's multiplier here would be at least 5 times plus. But then Jotaro proceeds to get angry and then surpass his new power, arguably at its highest, since Jotaro one-shots Dio when he's at his literal limit, is probably 10 times stronger than Dio in his awakened state, basically meaning that Jotaro enters his own Curse Mark II level state. With all that being said, and with a Sharingan being at its maximum, I still think Jotaro still beats him in terms of stats and hacks thanks to Time Stop and his own rage boost. But it probably wasn't an easy fight for Jotaro, FYI to the JoJo fans. This is pretty close, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of these fights were. So to come back to the original point of this video, could the Stardust Crusaders retrieve Sasuke from the Sound 4? Yeah, I think they could. It definitely won't be easy. Some Stardust Crusaders will die, maybe depending on the scenario. Others will be heavily damaged or critically injured, or others might just flat out just stomp their opponent, but it won't be an easy fight for either team. I would like to clarify here at the end, I am not a Naruto power scaler. I did my research the best I could with the information I was given, and I think I came out to a very logical answer between all these fights within this video. But there's always room for improvement, as that's what I've always said to me, if I did make an error. With all that being said, that's going to be the end of the video. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, stay hydrated. See you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen.